All right, welcome to the latest episode of the Organic Fitness Podcast. Honestly and personally, I don't think enough people say welcome. Welcome. Hi, how are you? So if this is your first time listening to the show, delighted to have you. If you're a long-time listener, I'm also delighted to have you, and it's good to have you back. So this episode, we will be touching on growing your own, the difference between organic and conventional, and how to do it from that very, very start. Because if you don't start off right, it makes it a hell of a lot harder to succeed later on. So the first of which is we're in a situation right now where you either have more time or you have more money. And typically, if you're listening to this podcast, you might have a little more time. So, for the majority of you people, buying a packet of seeds or setting yourself up to be more sustainable in 2021. Oh, if you're listening to this in 20, whatever, the fact is that you want to be more sustainable, you want to grow your own because you want to have fresh produce at arm's reach in your back garden, in a glass house, in a polytunnel, so you can consume it. Because the more foods that you eat that benefit you, the higher percentage of you being happier, being healthier. Why is that? We'll just touch on this briefly. The fact is that when you eat foods that contain fiber, fiber aids in gut health. Gut health is naturally increased when you have more microorganisms that feed on the fiber, which is an undigestible carbohydrate that we eat. And fiber comes from all different fruits and vegetables. Yes, I recommend you to eat fruit and vegetables when you get them organic, when you get them local, especially when you're growing them yourself. So right now, there's a couple of different things that in relation to exercise, because that's exactly what it is. It's free exercise when you are carrying out growing and walking around. There's such a big deal about 10,000 steps. Well, this is not only going to help you get 10,000 steps. Why is there a big emphasis on people getting 10,000 steps? It's the fact that you can use up 300 to 500 calories when you get 10,000 steps alone. And you can even get more, especially if you're using the shovel or using your hands and picking up and bending over and doing a squat, because that's what it is. Keeping your back straight, okay? Bending with the knees, making sure the legs are doing all the lifting. That's called niche activity. And that's really breaking it down towards exercise is more of a focus towards that due to your training, especially with me in particular, due to the fact that you use up a higher percentage of your overall energy in the day in activities that don't involve exercise. So if you do a 20-minute, if you do a 30-minute, if you do a 40-minute training session at home, the fact is you use up more energy when you're walking, when you're sowing the seeds right now, bending over, when you're picking up items. That's my emphasis. It's called neat activity. So if you want to actually improve on your overall waistline, reduce down your body fat, you have to do obviously focusing on the foods, but you need to focus in on what activities you're doing outside of training too. And this is why we're touching on to the likes of growing your own. When you're coming onto the podcast, listen to this. So things that can be done now, firstly, before growing your own is blackcurrant bushes. Blackcurrant bushes, if you don't currently have one and your neighbor has one, or you know somebody that has, they're pruning them at this time of year. The tail end of the dormant season is what I recommend. Why? Because then you don't have the wounds open through the majority of the winter, which I don't recommend on any of your fruit bushes or fruit trees, whether it be apple trees, which I prune typically the end of January. And fruit bushes such as blackcurrants are done the same. But how you know between a red currant and a black currant, I just like and love this point, is the fact that if you rub your fingers on the back, outer layer of the back of the blackcurrant bush, it's scented, such as in it's the scent and the smell of blackcurrants. However, if you do the exact same, very similar to look at without the leaves, without the fruit of the red currant, it doesn't have that effect. Just like timber, wouldn't be able to tell. But what's important is that if someone is pruning them, you can make and propagate stems that you can plant in your veg patch or out in your back garden today when you're listening to this podcast in February, the tail end of that dormant season. So that's free. That's free food from your neighbor. If not, you can also buy it from a nursery. Secondly, the whole idea of it is when you're pruning, making sure you're taking out the dead wood, okay, the old material, not giving it a haircut, because that's what a lot of people do, and they end up taking off a lot of the fruit when you're pruning, the likes of the red currants or the black currants. So I really emphasize it's a technique that you're taking out the older material. Fruit is produced on soft new growth on the red currants and the black currants. So go straight back down to the base and take out the older stems. How do you know what the older stems are? It's the fact that it's thicker. It looks older. It's wrinkly, it's bent, it's past its sell-by date, and we want the new, improved shoots with fruit to come on, okay, and keep it plenty vigorous. And another tip with the likes of, if you have red currants or black currants, or you're putting them in, putting the likes of wood chip around it, putting down cardboard first, putting down wood chip on top, and then you could even lightly sprinkle some seaweed if you can get some, if you're close to that. Because why? That's a mic that contains over 21 different micronutrients, which is so beneficial. Okay, one of those being iodine. You can also eat seaweed, okay, because that is something that is good for your thyroid function. And what's good for us is also good for the plants. You're winning on all ends when you're sticking to single ingredient foods, eating it and giving it to the things that are growing. Those are a couple of things that I do with my fruit trees, with my blackcurrant bushes, because it's, you know, when you're growing things organic and chemical free, it's so important to prevent the likes of pests and diseases. Prevention is key. People say, I have this disease, I have that disease. Don't get diseases. Keep them healthy, keep them fit, just like yourself. Right. Now we're moving on to things that you can grow yourself. Okay, the seeds. Firstly, we can get them. You need to get a packet of seeds. Okay, tomato seeds. Again, if you're starting off, you need to get them from either fruit or farm. But if you've previously had grown tomato seeds, or you saved them from last year, I have all those that I recommend you to do throughout the year. Because why? It's kind of a project, and that's why I like growing, because it changes every year, and it's nice to see from a full life cycle of a tomato seed, from saving it, growing it, looking after it, watering it, transplanting it, you name it. So the seeds and the things I highly recommend, the most basic things right now to get, are tomato seeds, spinach seeds, oriental seeds, oriental salad leaves, rocket. You have mensuna, which are one of the easiest seeds to grow. And one of the reasons why I recommend those is because it's still in the cooler months, and there's a pest out there called the flea beetle that you can get away with. If you sow them now, as soon as you're listening to this podcast in February, get them in, get a lovely harvest of oriental salads, whether it be rocket or mensuna. Mensuna grows a little bit faster than rocket. For those of you that are looking for the quickest crop they possibly can grow, mensuna for the win. Tick that box, you get onto it, you get the advantage of a seed that you sow. Okay, so where do you get the seeds? Fruit Hill Farm is what I recommend. They're based down in West Cork. You can also get them in any of your local stores. And the thing about it is, wherever you get them, make sure they're decent quality, because you want to have a good germination rate. Because if you don't have a germination rate, you got nothing. Call a spade a spade. So fertilizer and compost, what do I recommend after that? So with your fertilizer, I do recommend Classman's. Again, start with a good compost, because if the seeds don't germinate, you don't have a crop. That is as simple as I could possibly put it. Fertilizer is Classman, is the one that I use, and is the one that I recommend. There are other cheaper ones available, but high quality yields high results. And when you have your transplants and you're looking for somewhere to put them in, and if you don't have the advantage of beds already made up, there is a technique that you can use. It's called lazy beds. So again, you put in, these are on my YouTube, but you can put in onto fresh grass. Don't be taking up the sod, because that's where the most of the nutrients are found, right at the top layer of the soil. So you put in either seaweed, you put in farmyard manure, which hopefully you can get your hands on. Okay, you fold in the two sides. This is on YouTube as well, so I'm using my hands for the viewers that are watching this. So you fold in the two sides, folding in the two sides, then you have a ridge and a bed. From that, then you can dig the topsoil, dig a trench, and putting it on top. This is going to get you to form the likes of, okay, a nutrient-dense bed, because all the nutrients are there in the center. You fold it into two corners, like you would your duvet, very similar to your duvet. It's an analogy that's come to me out of nowhere. So your bed, it's called a single bed. You're sleeping in a single bed, or you have a single bed in your house. Everyone knows what that looks like. Putting in your farmyard manure, putting in your seaweed, either or. Okay, a layer of that, light layer of that, and you're folding into two sides. Two sides will come close to meeting with your single bed. Remember, single bed sheet. Okay, duvet cover. It won't cover it completely, so there's going to be a little gap in the middle. That's fine, little gap in the middle. And what you do is, in and along the left and right of your bed, you're digging up the soil, the carpet in this analogy, and we're putting in the soil left and right until we cover it completely, and it looks like a raised bed, slightly raised bed off the ground with a trench either side, which also helps with drainage. So if you have wet soil, this really helps too. This is a lazy bed technique, even though it's just really called an unbelievable bed technique. So the fact is, this is a simple bed that you can make if you don't have your ground prepped. Other things you can do is you could get in topsoil and raise it up and use raised beds. Okay, build in a frame, which I also do recommend for people who don't or much more inclined to have beds off the ground. The other side is there's always advantages, some different pros and cons to different items. Whether it be a raised bed, okay, it's going to have it's going to be much more likely to need more water because it's higher off the ground. Water is always going to go to its lowest point. The fact is that if it's higher off the ground, you don't have to bend down as much. So if puts in between, whatever you prefer, but just remember, always there's pros and advantages to everything that you do. So those are your beds. And the third option is the use of soil. Soil can be brought in, topsoil, you can bring in topsoil, and again, laying out, covering over your grass. Or what you could do firstly is either put in some farm manure, then put on your topsoil, and again, you plant directly into that. That is a technique that I have used myself, and I recommend the things that I do. And there you go. There's a simple one. So again, layer of some sort of compost, manure, seaweed is also another one, then topsoil. Good, plenty thick layer topsoil. Why? Because you don't want the likes of that grass and the weeds, all the other nasties to come up through it. So it has to be a decent amount of first compost or farm manure, then a decent amount of soil. I'd be recommending a couple of inches of soil. If you, this is the most expensive of the methods, 3 methods that I mentioned, but it's all if you haven't prepped your soil, if you haven't been previous listeners to this podcast, or you don't have a bed cleared already that's weed free, you could plant into. And one technique that you will be doing and incorporating in each and every year is the cover and uncover with farm manure technique. So that means your beds are exposed if you don't have them currently covered at the minute. What I do is I recommend people to put over the likes of your nutrient dense, either well decomposed. When I say farm manure, I mean well decomposed. There should be worms running through it. Okay, and there's farmers out there, and there's places where you can get it. Depending on your area, you could only need a large bucket or two, or you could need a volume that might exceed that, and you might need a small trailer. What I want you to do is I want you to cover over. This is previously done in the tail end of the season, September, October. We're talking about October, November. You're putting over your farm manure and you're covering it over. Covering it over. Why? Because you're then allowing the worms to do all your aerating. They'll come up down to the ground. They'll take all the nutrients, and as they do, that's their job, aerating the soil, bringing it from the top to the lower areas where the roots are going to be, lower areas of the soil. That's the main advantage of that. Okay, and you can incorporate a no-dig system in that one if that's something that you prefer, which is something that I've been trying on myself, and I do recommend to do it and do a couple of experiments for yourself that what suits your soil and what suits your site and the things that you're growing. So that comes off then in spring, peeling off the covering, and you have lovely soil that you can plant directly into. Okay, that's a breadwinner for anyone who is continuously going to be growing and growing, which I do recommend you to do because it's such an enjoyable thing, not only to do for yourself, but also to feed your family and the likes of your friends. And what you're growing, you can also share with other people. And that's what I want you to do. We're growing different crops, we're growing different varieties, and it's a community thing. This is a community. We're building a community. We're on to a winner. So those are the 3 methods, and I'm going to talk about sowing those 3 different varieties of vegetables: tomatoes, spinach, and oriental salads. So salads such as brassica, they're all from the brassica family. Okay, and those are Mansuna and rocket, as I said. They're sown in a tray. A tray, I recommend you to get the trays. It just makes it a hell of a lot easier. Get a 77 cell tray, which contains 77 cells. How about that? And you pop with your index finger and your middle finger holes going 2 centimeters deep in every one of those. From that, I recommend you to do a cut and come again system. What that means is you can get up to 4 harvests from those leafy greens. Yes, 4 harvests, winning all day. Okay, you cut it, it comes again. You cut it and it comes again. You can use salads varieties later in the summer. You can take the complete heads, but with this technique, you can get 4 harvests from the same seeds that you sow. That's what we're talking about. Maximize the benefits of the things that you grow, things that you do, things that you eat, because these salads from the likes of the brassica family contain an antioxidant called sulforaphane. Okay, and when you consume that, it's massively beneficial for reducing free radicals in your body. That just means reducing stress. Who doesn't want less stress in your body? You have less stress, you have more energy levels. That's it at its most basic level. They also contain vitamin A, good for your skin health. Okay, but that's a specific antioxidant, that sulforaphane, to the likes of the brassicas. So you're not getting it from any other leafy salads, and it's important to have that in your diet. And there's a little thing I'm going to explain to you. It becomes deactivated when cooking broccoli, because broccoli is related to rocket, and so is kale. So we actually end up deactivating that powerful antioxidant. It's extremely beneficial to the body, reducing stress, as I said. But what it does is becomes deactivated when cooking, but not when you have it from the likes of your rocket or mincemeat that you're having in leafy green salads for lunch, which we're going to be having in spring because you're going to be growing it, or else if you're not growing it, you're going to be buying it. So that's the winner with, and the main advantage with growing those type of salads now, rocket and mincemeat. Next one is spinach. The spinach that I recommend you to have and grow, the easiest one to start off is perpetual spinach. It's a large, it's a broad leaf spinach. You can harvest it at its immature stage, slightly smaller leaves, but the bigger the spinach, the better, the more bang for your buck. Okay, taking individual leaves. What you could do then is also do a cut again system. If you don't mind the aesthetics of the leaf, half chopped with my finger. I'm just taking off my fingers, my palm out of my hand here, and I take off the fingers. The next leaf will be half the size of the typical spinach. Why? Because you've chopped off its head in the cut and come again system. Or you can take the outer leaves that are just emerging, and you're gonna have loads of spinach. Again, these are planted exact same depth between 1 centimeter and 2 centimeters in those 77 cells, which I recommend you to get. Okay, you get half your tray of rocket and mincemeat, half of spinach, somewhere at the same time, but they're going to come up at different stages. Remember that the oriental salads are going to come up at a hell of a lot quicker rate than the pepper spinach. Pepper spinach a little bit slower, which is absolutely fine because you're going to have greens that will come up in about 4 weeks time, depending on a little bit quicker. Again, if you have it in a warm windowsill or a heated bench, which is something we'll be talking about in different episodes. So those are the things that I want you to sow first: your pepper spinach and your salads. With the pepper spinach, you have vitamin C that you're going to be consuming. Yes, good for skin health. Vitamin A, also good for skin health. Two of those things are found in all of your greens. But as well as that, with spinach, okay, it contains iron. Higher levels of iron increase your energy levels. Winning, it does contain a type of iron that is called non-heme, which is slightly more difficult, but consuming it with maybe red peppers that you can also sow, we'll be touching on just here in this very moment, this next episode. So having it with some red peppers will increase the absorption of vitamin C, or increase the absorption of iron. So vitamin C increases the absorption of non-heme iron found in your spinach. Right. The next one, peppers and tomatoes, sown the exact same, but tomatoes are my favorite. Tomatoes, without a shadow of a doubt. There isn't something that I don't enjoy more. Why? Because it's such a long life cycle and it's such a sweet, unbelievable crop to grow. Electric is the thing. When I see the germination of these tomatoes, there's so many different varieties. I recommend you to grow a few because you will end up loving it. And remember, the darker the color, the higher the antioxidants. There's lycopene found in these tomatoes, a natural mood improver. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to have a shallow tray that you have compost. Again, use high quality compost, use class matter, because these are the most desirable crops you're going to have because of a high return on them, especially the tomatoes. Tomatoes more so than peppers. Peppers don't have as high yielding as when compared to tomatoes. So the growing peppers, they're sweet, they're lovely, but you may only get up to 5 to 6 at best peppers in total, as opposed to you'll get kgs of tomatoes from planting one seed or having one plant. So the tray, shallow tray, okay, about centimeter or 2 centimeters of compost. Then you're making out your small lines, small little ridges. That's what I'll be doing. I'm making them out into different varieties because I want to know and keep the different lists of the colors, the varieties, all in specific areas of the polytunnel. Because if you don't have a polytunnel, I highly recommend it to you for these exact crops. So when you're sowing them, okay, make that little ridge, put a label on the top, writing what variety it is, what date you sowed it, then covering it over using your Classman compost, lightly sprinkling in, I'm using my hands right now, sprinkling in your compost and then compacting it in just so that it gets a firm foot holding in the likes of that tray. So when you have that in there, okay, give it a light watering with a rose-headed watering can. As a result of that, it's ready, it's there, okay? You've got that centimeter of compost on top that is going to be just a breadwinner when you see it coming up through that compost. In a couple of weeks' time, you should see the likes of its head starting to germinate, and You put that on the warmest windowsill you possibly have, or heated bench. This is the main advantage, because, and so why sometimes people don't get the crop that they sow their seeds of the tomatoes in particular, because they need at least 21 degrees, higher than the colder loving, because colder loving rocket and Mansuna, they'll grow without nearly the likes of a heated bench on a warm windowsill, no problem. But you really need warmer temperatures. Another trick is also you could use the radiator. But what I do recommend is trying to set yourself up for long-term success here, using the likes of a heated bench, okay? And some people get even little coverings of plastic that increase the temperature, which could even call it like a mini little polytunnel. But the heated bench is the gold standard, and I recommend the best because I want you to do your best in growing these types of vegetables for yourself, right? Doing it long-term as well. So set yourself up, get a heated bench. But right now, warm windowsill is the most minimum requirement you need with these, and or using it on a south face. Okay, south facing, wherever the sun comes up first is where you need to put these. So that's that, done and dusted. And now I'm just going to briefly touch on, you're waiting for those to come up, and we'll be talking about that in further episodes, what to do, when, where, and next. So from that, you're going to have oriental salads, rocket, vitamin C. You have got vitamin A, you've got sulforaphane, antioxidants, winning. You have tomatoes, natural mood improvers coming along the line in midsummer. Look forward to those. But the difference between the likes of those things we sold for 49 cents and in shops that we won't even mention is the taste. And taste is linked with antioxidants. And I'm a major believer in antioxidants. Why? Because it can reduce your stress, increase your energy levels. Who doesn't want less stress and more energy levels? From the moment you get up in the morning. Okay, I'm recording this quite early. Those of you who are looking on YouTube, it's pitch black. But I can't emphasize enough the fact that it's things that are going to become more and more frequent. People be more sustainable. People getting and consuming foods that benefit them on a regular basis, that are chemical free, that are growing yourself, and or that you buy them organically. Because for the majority of the year, we won't have tomatoes, but I want you to eat in season as well. I am the firm believer that given my own personal experience, I wait for the tomatoes. I don't have tomatoes out of a tin on a very rare occasion unless I'm at someone else's house. I eat in season. Why? Because it maximizes the benefits not only for me and things being shipped in from other countries. Ireland can produce so many different fruits and vegetables, okay? And when you get it local, when you get it fresh, when you get it organic, it's the difference between not having harsh chemicals such as glyphosate found in their inside in the cells. So glyphosate, just to break it down, is the active ingredient found, okay, in Roundup. Most of you know Roundup. We typically spray it in our patios, on the periphery edges. The council are spraying grass verges with it. Hands on my head right now, which is nonsensical in itself. We need to stop that. We need to drive this, we'll call it motion. Need to get the wheels going. And people not only growing their own, but buying organic produce is going to be what's going to do it, because consumers drive demand. And the more you buy, the more we demand, the more it will be supplied. Roundup and glyphosate is a carcinogenic, as I said, and that's been proven. You can have studies to say that organic produce has the same amount of nutritional value as compared to conventional, but the fact is, it's not always about what's in the fruits and vegetables. It's actually what's not in it. I'm a firm believer in, my diet has completely changed from the last 4 years that I've been growing and eating local, fresh, and organic produce that I grow myself with my own two hands, and it's something that I firmly believe there's serotonin, okay, that can naturally be increased when your gut health is improved. And negative effects on the gut health come from consuming toxic chemicals on a large amount. Okay, some people say, oh, but I can't always get organic. That's absolutely fine. You try and do your best. And now I'm here to help you to grow these fruits and vegetables from scratch, from seed. You're going to do a hell of a lot better than you were last year in 2020. Okay, and this is the year that you improve on not only your growing skills but your diet and your mood, because this is a natural de-stressor, growing your own. Okay, when serotonin, as I said, is produced, 95 to 90% of it is produced in your gut. That's a fact that you want to have more of fruit and vegetables that don't contain harsh chemicals such as glyphosate, and that can be absolutely positively proven when you're registered or someone is registered with the Organic Trust or the Soil Association or any of the other food products that contain or have the label of the green organic logo on its produce, okay, because they're regularly tested. I'm registered with a governing body, or the Organic Trust, and they come out minimum once a year. Check it. Each and every seed that I buy goes down to seeds that I have to buy organically, and following that, it's the compost, and following that, it's the things after that I add into the soil. Okay, I'm using nettles, I'm using garlic. These are things that not only nettles full of full of thing I'm looking for, nitrogen good for growth, leafy growth. I use garlic full of iron, not only good for us but also good for the immune system of the plants. Yes, I spray that on, but I crush it and using different techniques to expose the antioxidant called allicin and then dilute it with water, spraying that onto apple trees, spraying that onto different fruit trees and tomatoes throughout the year, not just before I harvest it as it's growing up. But we'll be talking about that later on. Those are all small little things that add up for you to have the cleanest, freshest, strongest immune system, not only yourself when you eat it, but also when the plant is growing up too. Reduce pests and diseases. All right. And those fruits, such as the tomatoes, are found in the dirty dozen. And I highly recommend it if you are consuming, we'll call it, foods that do end up in the dirty dozen. That list is made out every year. And just to touch on that one itself, it's just a general rule. If the sprays of the plant hit the leaves or the fruit that we typically eat, it ends up on that. So it's a plain example of tomatoes. It's sprayed and the tomatoes are exposed. We end up eating the flesh and the end consumer of those toxins or non-existent toxins end up in our body. So that's why I recommend you to firstly grow your own or eat organic tomatoes. Secondly, any crop that is sprayed spinach, which is a typical one that ends up there too. So 2 crops that you can now have the advantage of consuming less toxins in your diet come this year when you're growing your own. All right, just like to say, thanks very much for tuning into this latest episode of the Organic Fitness Podcast. You're on to a good one. Okay, as I said, you have any questions, make sure you pop them over to me directly. Okay, I'm on every different social media platform out there. You have Facebook, Colman Power. You have Instagram, Colman Power Organic Fitness. Okay, and as a result of that, you have my email, Colman Power Organic Fitness. Check out all those different platforms. I'm also on TikTok. I'm also on YouTube. We will have videos showing you exactly what to do. Okay, these are simple. These are simple ways that you can grow your own this year. All right, as I always end up saying to the listeners, okay, stay tuned, stay classy, and keep it organic.